The morning I discovered the truth about my brother, the air in our childhood home smelled like burnt coffee and regret. I remember standing in the doorway of his old bedroom, my fingers trembling against the cold brass doorknob, feeling the weight of 23 years of lies pressing down on my chest like a stone. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, that same familiar groan they had made since we were children racing through these halls, but now the sound felt ominous, like the house itself was warning me to turn back, to leave well enough alone, to preserve whatever fragile piece our family had managed to construct from the ruins of our past. But I could not turn back. Not after what Mom had said to me 3 days earlier, her voice barely a whisper as she lay in that sterile hospital bed, the machines beeping their steady rhythm around her like a countdown to some inevitable ending. The fluorescent lights had buzzed overhead, casting her face in a sickly yellow glow that made her look older than her 62 years, made her look like she was already halfway to wherever we go when we leave this world behind. She had grabbed my wrist with surprising strength for someone so diminished by illness, her fingers cold and papery against my skin, and she had said, "You need to know about Daniel. You need to know what he did to us all." Daniel. My brother. My older brother by 4 years, the golden child, the one who had always seemed to glide through life with an ease that the rest of us could only envy. Daniel with his easy smile and his quick wit, Daniel who had left home at 21 and never really come back, not in any way that mattered. Daniel who called on holidays and sent cards with generic messages and always had an excuse for why he could not make it to Thanksgiving or Christmas or Dad's funeral 5 years ago. We had all made our peace with his absence, or so I thought. We had told ourselves that some people just need distance, that some people process family differently, that Daniel was living his own life out there in Seattle or Portland or wherever he had landed most recently. And that was okay, that was his choice, that we had to respect it. But standing in his room that morning, with Mom's words still echoing in my head and my heart hammering against my ribs, I understood that we had been wrong about everything. The room smelled musty, like old paper and dust and memories left to rot. Nobody had been in here for years, not since Daniel had packed up his things and driven away in that beat-up Honda Civic, promising to visit soon, promising to stay in touch, promising all the things that people promise when they are really saying goodbye forever. The bed was still made with the same plaid comforter he had used in high school, faded now to a dull gray blue. His old posters clung to the walls, curling at the edges, bands I barely remembered, movies from another era. Everything frozen in time, a museum to a person who no longer existed, if he ever had. I moved deeper into the room, my footsteps muffled by the worn carpet. The morning sun filtered through the dusty blinds, creating stripes of light and shadow across the floor, and I could hear birds singing outside, their cheerful chirping a stark contrast to the dread pooling in my stomach. Mom had told me to look in his closet, behind the boxes of old textbooks and baseball trophies. She had told me there was a shoebox, plain and brown and unremarkable, and inside that shoebox was the truth about who Daniel really was, about what he had been doing all those years when we thought he was just distant, just busy, just living his own life. My hand shook as I slid open the closet door. It stuck halfway, swollen with humidity and age, and I had to yank it hard, the sudden movement sending a cascade of dust motes swirling through those stripes of sunlight. The closet smelled like mothballs and old leather, and I had to push aside winter coats that Daniel would never wear again, had to move boxes that felt heavy with the weight of a past I did not understand. And then I saw it, tucked in the back corner, exactly where Mom said it would be. A shoebox. Nike. The orange logo faded almost to nothing. I pulled it out carefully, as if it might explode, as if the mere act of touching it might change everything irrevocably. But everything had already changed, had not it? The moment Mom spoke those words in the hospital, the moment she decided that I needed to know, the world had already shifted on its axis. I was just catching up to a reality that had existed long before I was aware of it. I sat down on the edge of Daniel's bed, the springs creaking beneath me, and I lifted the lid off the shoebox. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, bundled together with rubber bands that had grown brittle with age. Some of the envelopes were yellowed, others were crisp and white, and they were addressed to different people, different organizations, different government agencies. My breath caught in my throat as I pulled out the first bundle and slipped off the rubber band, which snapped immediately, disintegrating into small black fragments that fell onto the comforter like ashes. The first letter was dated 15 years ago, when Daniel was 24 and I was 20, when I was still in college and he had just moved to his first apartment in the city. The paper felt thin and fragile between my fingers, and the handwriting was unmistakably his, that same slanted scrawl he had always had, the letters leaning forward as if they were running toward something. I began to read, and with each word, each sentence, each paragraph, I felt the floor dropping out from beneath me, felt the world I thought I knew crumbling into dust. To whom it may concern, the letter began, formal and cold. I am writing to report concerns about my family's financial activities. My father, Robert Chen, has been operating a cash business that I believe is not fully reporting its income to the Internal Revenue Service. I have observed him keeping 2 sets of books, one for official records and one that he keeps hidden in his home office. I believe this constitutes tax fraud, and I feel it is my civic duty to report this information. The words blurred in front of my eyes. I had to read them again, and then again, because surely I was misunderstanding, surely this could not be what it appeared to be. But there was no misunderstanding. Daniel had reported Dad to the IRS. Daniel had turned in our father, had documented his suspicions, had provided details about the restaurant Dad had run for 30 years. The little Chinese-American place on Maple Street that had been our family's livelihood, that had put food on our table and paid for our educations and kept a roof over our heads. My hands were shaking so badly now that I could barely hold the letter. I set it down on the bed and reached for another one, and then another, pulling them out randomly from the bundles, my heart racing faster with each new revelation. There was a letter to Child Protective Services, written when Daniel was 26, claiming that our parents were emotionally abusive, that they put too much pressure on us children, that they had unrealistic expectations that damaged our mental health. There was a letter to the health department, reporting that the restaurant was not following proper food safety protocols, listing violations that I knew were exaggerated or outright fabricated. There was a letter to our aunt, Mom's sister, telling her that Mom had been talking badly about her behind her back, sowing discord between them that had resulted in a rift that lasted years. Letter after letter, year after year, a systematic campaign of betrayal that had spanned more than a decade. Daniel had reported us, informed on us, sabotaged us at every turn. And we had never known. We had blamed bad luck, blamed the economy, blamed ourselves. When the IRS audit came and Dad had to pay tens of thousands of dollars in back taxes and penalties, we thought it was random, just our number coming up in some bureaucratic lottery. When Child Protective Services showed up at our door asking questions, we thought it was a concerned teacher or a nosy neighbor. When the health department shut down the restaurant for 2 weeks, costing us customers and revenue we could not afford to lose, we thought it was just bad timing, just the way things go sometimes in the restaurant business. But it had not been random. It had not been bad luck. It had been Daniel. Our own flesh and blood, systematically destroying the family from the inside out, and we had never suspected a thing. I do not know how long I sat there on that bed, surrounded by evidence of my brother's treachery, the morning sun climbing higher in the sky and the room growing warmer, stuffier, harder to breathe in. My phone buzzed in my pocket several times, probably my sister Jessica calling to check on me, to see if I had made it to the house okay, to ask if I had found anything. But I could not answer. I could not speak. I could not do anything but sit there and try to process the magnitude of what I had discovered. Eventually, I heard the front door open downstairs, heard footsteps in the hallway, heard Jessica's voice calling my name. Maya? Maya, are you here? Your car's outside. Her voice sounded so normal, so unchanged, and I realized that she did not know yet. Mom had only told me. Maybe she had run out of time, or maybe she had decided that one of us knowing was enough, that I would have to be the one to tell the others, to shatter their illusions the way mine had been shattered. I'm up here, I called back, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. In Daniel's room. I heard her climbing the stairs, her footsteps quick and light. Jessica had always been the energetic one, the optimist, the one who saw the best in everyone. She was 2 years younger than me, 28 now, working as a teacher at the elementary school where we had both gone as children. She still lived in town, still had Sunday dinners with Mom before the cancer got bad, still believed that family was everything, that blood was thicker than water, that we all had to stick together no matter what. She appeared in the doorway, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and one of those soft sweaters she favored, this one a pale pink that made her look younger than her years. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile faded quickly when she took in my expression, the letters scattered across the bed, the shoebox sitting open like Pandora's box after all the evils had escaped. "What is all this?" she asked, stepping into the room. The floorboards creaked under her weight, and I noticed absently that she was wearing the same perfume she had worn since high school, something floral and sweet that reminded me of spring. "Maya, what's wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost." "Worse than a ghost," I said, and my voice cracked on the words. I picked up the first letter I had read, the one about Dad and the IRS, and I held it out to her. "You need to read this. You need to read all of this." Jessica took the letter from me, her brow furrowed in confusion. I watched her face as she read, watched the confusion turn to disbelief, watched the disbelief turn to horror. Her hand came up to cover her mouth, and the letter trembled in her grip. "No," she whispered. "No, this cannot be real. This cannot be from Daniel." "It is his handwriting," I said flatly. "And there are more. So many more. Jessica, he reported us. He reported Dad to the IRS. He called Child Protective Services on Mom and Dad. He sabotaged the restaurant. He has been doing this for years, maybe his whole adult life. He has been destroying us piece by piece, and we never knew." Jessica sank down onto the bed beside me, her legs seeming to give out beneath her. She was still holding the letter, staring at it as if she could make the words change by sheer force of will. "But why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why would he do this? What did we ever do to him?" That was the question, was it not? The question that had been burning in my mind since I opened that shoebox, since I read the first letter, since I understood what Daniel had been doing all these years. What had we done to deserve this? What had Mom and Dad done to make their own son turn against them so completely, so systematically, so cruelly? I do not know, I admitted. But Mom knew. She told me to look for this. She knew what he had done, and she wanted me to know too. Maybe she wanted us to understand why he stayed away. Maybe she wanted us to stop making excuses for him. Jessica was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks, and I realized that I was crying too, had been crying for a while without noticing. We sat there together on our brother's bed, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal, and we grieved for the brother we thought we had known, for the family we thought we had been, for the innocence we could never get back. We have to tell Mom we found it, Jessica said eventually, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. She is waiting to hear from us. She needs to know that we know. I nodded, though the thought of going back to that hospital, of sitting beside Mom's bed and confirming that yes, we had found the letters, yes, we understood now what Daniel had done, filled me with a weariness so profound I could barely move. But Jessica was right. Mom was dying. The doctors had given her weeks, maybe a month if we were lucky. She had carried this secret for who knows how long, had protected us from the truth, and now she had decided that we deserved to know. We owed it to her to acknowledge that, to let her know that her burden had been shared. We gathered up the letters carefully, reverently almost, as if they were sacred texts instead of instruments of destruction. We put them back in the shoebox, and I carried it downstairs, Jessica following close behind me. The house felt different now, tainted somehow, as if Daniel's betrayal had seeped into the walls, into the foundation, into every memory we had ever made here. I wondered if we would ever be able to come back to this place without feeling the weight of what we now knew, without seeing his ghost in every corner, without remembering that the person we had loved and trusted had been working against us all along. We drove to the hospital in Jessica's car, neither of us speaking, the shoebox sitting on my lap like a bomb that had already detonated. The day was beautiful, unseasonably warm for October, the trees ablaze with autumn colors, red and gold and orange, and I found myself resenting the beauty of it, resenting the fact that the world could look so lovely when everything inside me felt broken and wrong. The hospital parking lot was half empty, and we found a spot close to the entrance. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, smelling of disinfectant and illness, and our footsteps echoed on the linoleum floors as we made our way to the elevator, up to the 3rd floor, down the long corridor to Mom's room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere a machine was beeping, and a television was playing too loudly, and I wanted to scream at all of it, wanted to demand that the world stop being so relentlessly normal when nothing would ever be normal again. Mom was awake when we entered her room, propped up on pillows, her thin frame barely making a dent in the hospital bed. She looked so small, so fragile, nothing like the strong woman who had raised us, who had worked 16-hour days at the restaurant, who had held our family together through every crisis and setback. The cancer had stolen so much from her, had whittled her down to almost nothing, but her eyes were still sharp, still alert, and they fixed on the shoebox in my hands immediately. "You found it," she said, and it was not a question. Her voice was raspy, weakened by illness and medication, but there was a note of relief in it, as if she had been holding her breath waiting for this moment. "We found it," I confirmed, moving to her bedside. Jessica closed the door behind us, shutting out the noise of the hospital, creating a small bubble of privacy for this conversation that would change everything. "Mom, why did you not tell us before? Why did you let us go on thinking that Daniel was just distant, just busy? Why did you protect him?" Mom closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, they were wet with tears. "I was not protecting him," she said softly. "I was protecting you. Both of you. And your father, before he passed. I did not want you to carry this burden, this knowledge that your own brother had betrayed us. I thought maybe if I kept it to myself, if I just bore it alone, then at least you could have your memories of him, could believe that he loved you even if he did not show it. But he did not love us, Jessica said, her voice breaking. She had moved to the other side of the bed, and she took Mom's hand in hers, holding it gently. How could he love us and do what he did? How could he systematically try to destroy our family and call it love? I do not know, Mom admitted. I have asked myself that question 1,000 times, 10,000 times. I have tried to understand what happened to him, what changed him, what made him turn against us. And I think, in the end, it comes down to resentment. Daniel always felt like he did not fit in, like he was different from the rest of us. He resented the expectations we had for him, resented the pressure to succeed, to make us proud, to carry on the family legacy. He saw it as a burden instead of a gift, and somewhere along the way, that resentment turned into something darker, something poisonous. I thought back to our childhood, trying to see it through Daniel's eyes, trying to understand how the same experiences that had shaped Jessica and me into who we were could have twisted him into someone capable of such betrayal. I remembered Dad pushing Daniel to excel in school, to get perfect grades, to get into a top university. I remembered Mom's disappointment when Daniel chose to study philosophy instead of business or medicine, when he talked about wanting to be a writer instead of taking over the restaurant. I remembered the arguments, the tension, the way Daniel had started pulling away from us even before he left home. But lots of kids have demanding parents. Lots of kids feel pressure to live up to expectations. That does not turn them into informants, into saboteurs, into people who dedicate years of their lives to destroying the people who raised them. There had to be something more, something deeper, something we were missing. Did something happen? I asked Mom. Something specific that made him hate us so much? Because this is not just resentment, Mom. This is hatred. This is a campaign of destruction that lasted years. People do not do that unless something really terrible happened. Mom was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant, as if she was looking back through the years, sifting through memories, trying to decide what to tell us and what to keep hidden. Finally, she spoke, her voice so soft we had to lean in to hear her. There was an incident, she said. When Daniel was 19, home from college for the summer. He had met someone, a boy, and he wanted to bring him home to meet us. Your father and I, we were not as understanding as we should have been. We said things, terrible things, things I have regretted every day since. We told him it was a phase, that he was confused, that he needed to focus on his studies and stop with this nonsense. We told him he was bringing shame on the family, that he needed to think about his sisters, about the restaurant, about our reputation in the community. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and damning. Jessica's hand tightened on Mom's, and I felt something cold settle on my stomach. I had been 10 years old that summer, too young to understand what was happening, too young to remember the details. But I remembered Daniel being angry, remembered him and Dad shouting at each other, remembered him leaving earlier than planned, his face tight with fury and hurt. He never brought it up again, Mom continued, tears streaming down her face now. He never mentioned the boy, never talked about dating, never gave us another chance to accept him for who he was. And we never asked. We just pretended it had never happened, pretended everything was fine, and Daniel went along with it. But I think that was when we lost him. That was when he decided that we did not deserve his love, his loyalty, his honesty. That was when he started to hate us. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All these years, all this destruction, all this pain, and it came down to one moment, one conversation, one failure to love unconditionally. I was not excusing what Daniel had done. Nothing could excuse the systematic betrayal, the lies, the sabotage. But I understood it now, understood the wound that had festered for years, understood how rejection from the people who are supposed to love you no matter what can turn into something toxic and destructive. Did Dad know? I asked. Before he died, did he know what Daniel had been doing? Mom nodded slowly. He knew. I told him after the IRS audit, after I found some emails Daniel had sent, after I started putting the pieces together. He was devastated. He blamed himself, said he had driven Daniel away, said he had failed as a father. He wanted to reach out to Daniel, to apologize, to try to make things right. But I convinced him not to. I told him that Daniel had made his choice, that he had chosen revenge over reconciliation, and that we needed to protect ourselves, protect the family. So we kept the secret, and we let Daniel stay away, and we never told him that we knew. And now you are telling us, Jessica said, her voice thick with emotion. Why now, Mom? Why not take this to your grave? Why burden us with this? Because I am dying, Mom said simply. And because Daniel will come back when I am gone. He will come to the funeral, and he will play the grieving son, and he will expect you to welcome him, to comfort him, to treat him like family. And I could not let that happen without you knowing the truth. I could not let him fool you the way he fooled us for so long. You deserve to know who he really is, what he really did. You deserve to make your own choices about whether to forgive him or to cut him out of your lives completely. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor, the soft hiss of oxygen flowing through the tubes in Mom's nose. Outside, the sun was shining, and people were going about their lives, unaware that in this small hospital room, a family was being torn apart by revelations that should have come years ago, by truths that had been buried too long. I do not know if I can forgive him, I said finally. I do not know if I even want to try. What he did to Dad, to you, to all of us, it is unforgivable. He destroyed Dad's business, his reputation, his peace of mind. He caused you years of stress and pain. He tore our family apart, and for what? Because you did not accept him when he was 19? Because you said some hurtful things? People say hurtful things all the time. Parents make mistakes. That does not give you the right to wage a decade-long campaign of destruction against them. Mom reached out and took my hand, her grip weak but insistent. I am not asking you to forgive him, she said. I am not even sure I have forgiven him, and I am the one who is dying. I am just asking you to know the truth, to understand what happened, to make your decisions with open eyes. Whatever you choose to do when he comes back, I will support you. Even from wherever I end up, I will support you. We stayed with Mom for hours that day, talking and crying and trying to process the enormity of what we had learned. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications, but we barely noticed them. We were in our own world, a world that had been fundamentally altered, a world where the brother we thought we knew had never really existed at all. When we finally left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Jessica and I walked to her car in silence, both of us exhausted, emotionally wrung out, unsure of what came next. We sat in the car for a long time before she started the engine, just staring out at the parking lot, at the other cars, at the people coming and going, living their normal lives with their normal problems. What are we going to do? Jessica asked finally. When he comes back, When he shows up at the funeral, what are we going to do? I do not know, I admitted. But we have time to figure it out. Mom is still here. We do not have to make any decisions right now. But even as I said it, I knew that the decision was already being made, was already forming in the back of my mind. Daniel had made his choices, had spent years making choices that hurt us, that destroyed us, that showed us exactly how little we meant to him. And now it was our turn to choose. Our turn to decide whether blood really was thicker than water, whether family really meant forgiveness no matter what, whether some betrayals were simply too deep to ever heal. The days that followed were strange and surreal. Jessica and I went through the motions of our lives, going to work, paying bills, visiting Mom in the hospital, but everything felt hollow, like we were actors playing roles in a play we no longer understood. We did not tell anyone else about what we had discovered. Mom had kept the secret for years, and we felt obligated to honor that, at least for now, at least until we decided what to do with the information. I found myself thinking about Daniel constantly, obsessively, trying to reconcile the brother I remembered with the person who had written those letters. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike when I was 6, running alongside me with his hand on the seat, encouraging me, telling me I could do it. I remembered him helping me with my math homework in middle school, patient and kind even when I did not understand. I remembered him at my high school graduation, cheering louder than anyone else when they called my name. Were those memories real? Had he cared about me then, or had he already started to hate us, already started planning his revenge? I went back to the house one afternoon when Jessica was at work, back to Daniel's room, back to that shoebox. I read through more of the letters, torturing myself with the details of his betrayal. There were letters I had not seen the first time, letters that went back even further, to when he was still in college. A letter to the University Financial Aid Office, claiming that our parents were hiding assets, trying to get his scholarship revoked. A letter to our grandmother, Mom's mother, telling her that Mom had been stealing from her, poisoning their relationship until Grandma died believing her own daughter was a thief. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. The calculation. The patience. Daniel had not acted in a moment of anger or hurt. He had planned this, had sustained it over years, had found new ways to hurt us again and again. This was not the action of someone who had been wounded and lashed out. This was the action of someone who had decided that we deserved to suffer, that our suffering was justified, that he was somehow the victim and we were the villains in a story only he could see. I was sitting on his bed, surrounded by letters, when my phone rang. It was the hospital. Mom's condition had deteriorated. We needed to come now, they said. If we wanted to say goodbye, we needed to come now. I called Jessica from the car, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She met me at the hospital, and we ran through the corridors together, our footsteps echoing, our breath coming in gasps. But we were too late. By the time we reached her room, Mom was gone. The machines had been turned off, and she lay still and peaceful, finally free from the pain that had consumed her for so long. A nurse touched my shoulder gently, murmuring condolences, explaining what would happen next, but I barely heard her. I was staring at Mom's face, at the lines that had been etched there by years of hard work and worry and secrets she should never have had to keep. I was thinking about how she had spent her last days making sure we knew the truth, making sure we were not blindsided by Daniel's return, making sure we could protect ourselves from the brother who had spent years trying to destroy us. Jessica was sobbing, her whole body shaking with grief, and I put my arm around her, holding her close even though I felt numb, disconnected, like I was watching this scene from somewhere far away. We had known this was coming. The doctors had prepared us. But knowing and experiencing are two different things, and the finality of it, the absolute irreversibility of death, hit me like a physical blow. We stayed with her for a long time, neither of us wanting to leave, neither of us ready to step out of that room and into a world where Mom no longer existed. Eventually, the nurses needed us to go, needed to prepare her body, needed to do all the practical things that death requires. We signed papers, made phone calls, set the machinery of grief in motion. And then we had to call Daniel. We sat in Jessica's car in the parking lot, the sun setting again, another day ending, and we stared at my phone, at Daniel's number in my contacts. I had not called him in over a year. He had not called me in longer than that. Our last conversation had been brief and awkward, full of long pauses and generic pleasantries. He had asked about Mom's health, and I had told him she was declining, and he had said he was sorry to hear that, and then we had run out of things to say to each other. "Do you want me to do it?" Jessica asked, her voice hoarse from crying. I shook my head. "No. I will do it. He is still our brother, even if he does not deserve to be. He deserves to know that Mom is gone." I dialed his number before I could change my mind, before I could think too hard about what I was doing. It rang 3 times, 4 times, and I thought maybe he would not answer, maybe I would get his voicemail and I could leave a message and not have to hear his voice. But then he picked up. "Maya?" He sounded surprised, and I realized that he probably was. I never called him. None of us did. We had learned years ago that he did not want to hear from us, that he had built a life that did not include us, that we were relics from a past he had left behind. "Daniel," I said, and my voice sounded strange, formal, like I was talking to a stranger. "I am calling to let you know that Mom passed away this evening. She had been in the hospital for the past week, and her condition deteriorated rapidly. Jessica and I were with her at the end." There was silence on the other end of the line, a silence that stretched so long I thought maybe the call had dropped. But then I heard him take a breath, heard the slight hitch in it that suggested he was crying or trying not to cry. "I see," he said finally. "Thank you for letting me know. When is the funeral?" "We have not made arrangements yet," I said. "We just left the hospital. But it will probably be early next week. I will send you the details when we have them." "I will be there," he said. "I will fly in tomorrow. Is there anything I can do? Anything you need help with?" The audacity of it, the sheer gall of him offering to help, made something hot and angry flare up in my chest. But I swallowed it down, kept my voice level. "No. Jessica and I have it under control. We will see you at the funeral." I hung up before he could say anything else, before I could say something I would regret, before the anger that was building inside me could explode. Jessica was watching me, her eyes red and swollen, and I could see the same anger reflected in her face, the same sense of betrayal and hurt. "He is coming," I said unnecessarily. "He will be here tomorrow." "What are we going to do?" Jessica asked again, the same question she had asked days ago, the question that still had no good answer. "I do not know," I said. "But we have to decide soon. We have to decide if we are going to confront him, if we are going to tell him that we know what he did, or if we are just going to let him play his role, let him be the grieving son, and then let him leave again without ever knowing that his secrets are not secret anymore." We drove back to the house where we had grown up, the house that now felt haunted by everything we had learned. We ordered takeout that neither of us ate, and we sat in the living room where we had spent countless evenings as children, watching television and doing homework and fighting over the remote control, and we tried to figure out what to do about Daniel. Part of me wants to confront him, Jessica admitted. Part of me wants to throw those letters in his face and demand to know how he could do that to us, how he could be so cruel, so calculating. I want to see his face when he realizes that we know, that Mom told us, that he cannot hide behind his lies anymore. And the other part? I asked. The other part wants to never speak to him again, she said softly. The other part wants to get through the funeral and then cut him out of my life completely, never give him the satisfaction of knowing that he hurt us, never give him the opportunity to justify what he did or make excuses or try to make us understand. Just erase him, like he tried to erase us. I understood both impulses. I felt them both warring inside me, the desire for confrontation and the desire for silence, the need to make him face what he had done and the need to protect myself from further pain. In the end, I think we both knew what we were going to do, even if we did not say it out loud that night. We were going to confront him. We were going to make him answer for what he had done. Because Mom had given us the truth, and the truth demanded to be spoken, demanded to be acknowledged, demanded to be reckoned with. Daniel arrived the next afternoon, driving a rental car from the airport, pulling up in front of the house just as Jessica and I were finishing lunch. We watched him through the window, watched him sit in the car for a moment before getting out, watched him look up at the house with an expression we could not quite read from this distance. He looked older than I remembered, his hair starting to gray at the temples, lines around his eyes that had not been there the last time I saw him. He was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, casual but neat, and he moved with a hesitance that was unlike the confident brother I remembered from childhood. Jessica and I met him at the door. We did not hug him, did not welcome him, just stood there in the doorway and looked at him, and I saw confusion flicker across his face, saw him register that something was wrong, that we were not greeting him the way he expected. Maya. Jessica, he said, his voice uncertain. I am so sorry about Mom. I know I should have been here sooner, should have visited more, should have been a better son. I have a lot of regrets. Do you? I said flatly, and it was not a question. I stepped back, gesturing for him to come inside. We need to talk, Daniel. We need to talk about a lot of things. He followed us into the living room, and I could see him taking in the familiar surroundings, the furniture that had not changed in decades, the family photos on the walls, the life he had left behind. Jessica and I sat on the couch, and Daniel took the armchair across from us, perching on the edge of it like he was ready to flee at any moment. I had brought the shoebox downstairs earlier, had placed it on the coffee table, and now I pushed it toward him. Mom wanted us to find this, I said. Before she died, she told me where to look, told me that we needed to know the truth about you. So we found it, Daniel. We found all of it. Every letter, every report, every betrayal. We know what you did to us. We know what you have been doing for years. The color drained from Daniel's face. He stared at the shoebox like it was a snake coiled to strike, and his hands gripped the arms of the chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. I can explain, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Explain? Jessica's voice was sharp, cutting. Explain how you reported Dad to the IRS? Explain how you called Child Protective Services on our parents? Explain how you sabotaged the restaurant, poisoned relationships, spent years systematically trying to destroy this family? Please, Daniel, explain that to us. We are dying to understand. Daniel closed his eyes, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet with tears, but I felt no sympathy for him, no softening of the anger that had been building in me since I first opened that shoebox. "You do not understand what it was like," he said. "You do not understand what they did to me, how they made me feel, how they rejected me when I needed them most." "We know about the boy," I said. "We know that you wanted to bring someone home and Mom and Dad reacted badly. We know they said hurtful things, that they were not accepting, that they failed you in that moment. Mom told us everything before she died. She told us about that summer, about the fight, about how they pushed you away. And it was wrong, Daniel. What they did was wrong. But it does not justify what you did. It does not come close to justifying it." "You were not there," Daniel said, his voice rising, anger creeping into it now. "You were just a kid. You do not remember how it really was, how they controlled everything, how they had plans for my life that had nothing to do with what I wanted, who I was. It was not just about being gay. It was about everything. They wanted me to be someone I was not, and when I tried to be myself, they rejected me. They made it clear that I was only acceptable to them if I fit into their narrow vision of what a son should be. So you decided to destroy them," Jessica said. "You decided that the appropriate response to feeling controlled and rejected was to spend years sabotaging their business, their relationships, their peace of mind. You decided to hurt them in every way you could think of, and you did not care who else got hurt in the process. You did not care about Maya or me, about how the IRS audit affected us, about how the restaurant closing affected us. You were so focused on your revenge that you did not care about anyone else." "I never meant to hurt you," Daniel said, looking at us with something that might have been genuine remorse. "I never wanted you to be collateral damage. But I was so angry, so hurt, and I did not know how else to make them understand what they had done to me. I wanted them to feel what I felt, to lose what I had lost, to understand that actions have consequences." "And did it work?" I asked. "Did destroying Dad's business make you feel better? Did watching Mom stress and worry and blame herself make you feel vindicated? Did any of it actually heal the wound they caused, or did it just make you into someone you should be ashamed of?" Daniel did not answer. He just sat there, tears streaming down his face, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. And I felt nothing. No sympathy, no forgiveness, no desire to comfort him. He had made his choices, had spent years making choices that hurt us, and now he had to live with the consequences of those choices. "Dad died thinking he had failed you," I said, and my voice was cold, hard. "He died blaming himself for driving you away, for not being a better father, for not accepting you. Mom told us that he wanted to reach out to you, wanted to apologize, wanted to try to make things right. But she convinced him not to, because she knew what you had been doing, knew that you had chosen revenge over reconciliation. So he died with that guilt, that regret, and you let him. You could have told him the truth at any point. You could have confronted him, talked to him, tried to work through your issues like an adult. But instead, you hid behind anonymous letters and phone calls, and you let him die thinking he was a terrible father." "I did not know he was dying," Daniel said weakly. "I did not know it was that serious. If I had known, I would have come back, I would have talked to him." "Would you?" Jessica challenged. "Or would you have just found another excuse to stay away, another reason why you could not face us? Because that is what you have been doing for years, Daniel. Staying away, making excuses, pretending that you have this whole other life that is so much better than the one you left behind. But the truth is, you have been obsessed with us this whole time. You have been so focused on hurting us that you have not been able to move on, to build a real life, to find any kind of peace or happiness." Daniel flinched at her words, and I knew she had hit a nerve, had touched on a truth that he had probably been avoiding for years. "I have a life," he said, but it sounded hollow, unconvincing. "I have a job, friends, a partner. I have moved on." "Have you told your partner what you did to us?" I asked. "Does he know that you spent years sabotaging your own family? Does he know about the letters, the reports, the systematic campaign of destruction? Or have you kept that secret, pretended to be someone you are not, just like you pretended with us?" Daniel did not answer, and his silence was answer enough. He had not told anyone. He had carried this secret alone, had lived with the knowledge of what he had done, and it had probably eaten away at him, had probably poisoned every relationship he tried to build, every moment of happiness he tried to claim. Because you cannot build a life on a foundation of lies and betrayal. You cannot find peace when you are carrying that much guilt and anger and unresolved pain. We sat in silence for a long time, the three of us, the remnants of a family that had been broken long before any of us realized it. Outside, I could hear children playing, their laughter bright and carefree, and I felt a pang of envy for their innocence, for the simplicity of their lives. They did not know yet that families could be this complicated, this painful, this irreparably damaged. "What do you want from me?" Daniel asked finally. "Do you want me to apologize? Do you want me to grovel, to beg for forgiveness? Do you want me to leave and never come back? Just tell me what you want, and I will do it." "I want you to take responsibility," I said. "I want you to stop making excuses, stop blaming Mom and Dad for everything, stop acting like you were the only victim in this situation. What they did to you was wrong, but what you did in response was so much worse. You did not just hurt them. You hurt all of us. You hurt the memory of this family. You hurt any chance we might have had at a real relationship with you. And you did it deliberately, systematically, over years. That is not the action of someone who was wounded and lashing out. That is the action of someone who chose cruelty, who chose revenge, who chose to become the villain in his own story." "I know," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "I know what I did. I know what I became. And I have hated myself for it every single day. But I did not know how to stop. I did not know how to let go of the anger, how to forgive them, how to forgive myself. It just kept building and building, and every time I thought about stopping, I would remember that summer, remember the look on Dad's face when I told him I was gay, remember the things Mom said, and the anger would come flooding back." "Then you should have gotten therapy," Jessica said bluntly. "You should have talked to someone, worked through your issues, found healthy ways to process your pain. You should not have spent years destroying the people who raised you, who loved you despite their flaws, who would have forgiven you if you had just given them the chance." "Would they have?" Daniel asked, looking up at us with red-rimmed eyes. "Would they really have forgiven me? Or would they have just kept expecting me to be someone I was not, kept pushing me to fit into their vision of what a son should be?" "We will never know," I said. "Because you never gave them the chance. You never came back and said, 'This is who I am, this is what I need from you, can you accept me?' You just left and started your campaign of revenge, and you robbed all of us of the opportunity to grow, to change, to become better people. Mom and Dad might have surprised you. They might have come around, might have learned to accept you, might have become the parents you needed them to be. But you did not give them that chance. You decided that they were irredeemable, that they deserved to be punished, and you appointed yourself judge, jury, and executioner. Daniel buried his face in his hands, his whole body shaking with sobs now, and I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. But it was buried under layers of anger and hurt and betrayal, and I could not access it, could not let myself feel sorry for him when he had caused so much pain, so much damage, so much irreparable harm. "The funeral is on Tuesday," Jessica said, her voice flat and emotionless. "You can come if you want. You can play the role of the grieving son, and we will not say anything to contradict you. We will not tell anyone what you did, because Mom kept your secret for years, and we will honor that. But after the funeral, we do not want to see you again. We do not want phone calls or emails or birthday cards. We do not want you in our lives. You made your choice years ago, and now we are making ours." Daniel looked up at us, his face ravaged by tears, and I could see that he wanted to argue, wanted to plead, wanted to convince us to give him another chance. But he must have seen something in our faces, some finality, some absolute certainty, because he just nodded slowly. "I understand," he said hoarsely. "I understand, and I do not blame you. I do not deserve your forgiveness. I do not deserve to be part of this family. I will come to the funeral, and then I will leave, and I will not bother you again." He stood up then, moving slowly like an old man, and he walked to the door. He paused there, his hand on the doorknob, and he turned back to look at us one last time. "For what it is worth," he said, "I am sorry. I am sorry for everything I did, for all the pain I caused, for the person I became. I wish I could go back and do it differently. I wish I could be the brother you deserved. But I cannot change the past, and I cannot undo what I have done. So all I can do is say I am sorry, and hope that someday, somehow, you might be able to forgive me." "Maybe someday," I said, though I did not believe it. "But not today. Not any time soon." He nodded, and then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of something, like the final punctuation on a story that had been written over decades. Jessica and I sat there in the living room, listening to his car start, listening to him drive away, and neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. The funeral was on Tuesday, as Jessica had said. It was a small affair, just family and a few close friends, held at the funeral home where we had held Dad's service 5 years earlier. The room smelled of flowers and furniture polish, and soft music played in the background, something classical and somber that I did not recognize. Mom's casket was at the front of the room, closed because she had requested cremation, and there were photos of her arranged on easels, photos from throughout her life. Mom as a young woman, beautiful and smiling. Mom and Dad on their wedding day. Mom holding baby Daniel, then baby me, then baby Jessica. Mom at the restaurant, wearing her apron, looking tired but happy. Mom in her garden, surrounded by the roses she loved. A life in pictures, a life that had been full and rich and complicated, reduced to a series of frozen moments. Daniel arrived early, before most of the other guests, and he sat in the back row, alone, his head bowed. He was wearing a dark suit, and he looked smaller somehow, diminished, like the confrontation had taken something essential from him. Jessica and I sat in the front row, and we did not acknowledge him, did not look back at him, just focused on the service, on the pastor's words, on the memories people shared. People spoke about Mom's kindness, her work ethic, her dedication to her family. They talked about the restaurant, about how she had worked alongside Dad for 30 years, how she had made everyone feel welcome, how her dumplings were the best in town. They talked about how she had volunteered at the school, how she had helped organize community events, how she had been a pillar of the neighborhood. They painted a picture of a woman who had been loved and respected, who had made a difference in people's lives, who had left the world better than she found it. And I thought about how Daniel had tried to destroy that, had tried to tarnish her reputation, had tried to make her life harder at every turn. And I felt the anger rising in me again, hot and bitter, and I had to clench my fists in my lap to keep from standing up and screaming at him, from telling everyone what he had done, from shattering the peaceful facade of this memorial service. But I did not. I kept my promise to Mom, kept the secret she had kept for so long, and I let Daniel sit there in his guilt and his grief, and I hoped that it was eating him alive, that he was drowning in the weight of what he had done, that he would carry this burden for the rest of his life. After the service, there was a reception at the house, the same house where we had confronted Daniel, the same house where we had grown up. People milled around, eating the food that neighbors had brought, sharing stories, offering condolences. Jessica and I moved through the crowd like ghosts, accepting hugs and kind words, but feeling disconnected from it all, feeling like we were watching from a distance. Daniel did not come to the reception. He left immediately after the service, and I saw him through the window of the funeral home, getting into his rental car, sitting there for a moment with his hands on the steering wheel, his head bowed. And then he drove away, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would never see him again. The days after the funeral blurred together. Jessica and I sorted through Mom's things, deciding what to keep and what to donate, what to sell and what to throw away. We cleaned out the house, packed up a lifetime of memories, and tried to figure out what to do with a property that neither of us wanted to live in but neither of us could bear to sell. In the end, we decided to rent it out, to let someone else make new memories in those rooms, to let the house serve a purpose instead of sitting empty and haunted. We found more letters as we cleaned, tucked into drawers and hidden in closets, evidence of Daniel's campaign that Mom had collected over the years. We burned them all in the backyard, watching the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash, watching the smoke rise into the autumn sky. It felt like a ritual, like we were purging the house of his presence, of his poison, of everything he had done to hurt us. Weeks passed, then months. Jessica and I talked often, processing what we had learned, trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out how to move forward. We talked about whether we had made the right choice in cutting Daniel out of our lives, whether we should have tried harder to understand him, to forgive him, to give him a chance at redemption. But every time we circled back to that question, we came to the same conclusion. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Some wounds cannot heal. Some relationships cannot be salvaged, no matter how much you might want them to be. I thought about Daniel often, wondered what he was doing, whether he was okay, whether he had told his partner the truth, whether he was getting help, whether he was finding any kind of peace. But I did not reach out. I kept my promise to myself, to Jessica, to Mom. I let him go, let him live his life without us, let him carry the consequences of his choices alone. One day, about 6 months after Mom's funeral, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Daniel, postmarked from Seattle, and my first instinct was to throw it away without reading it, to maintain the boundary we had established, to protect myself from whatever he might say. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, my hand shaking slightly as I unfolded the pages. The letter was long, handwritten in that same slanted scrawl, and it was the most honest thing I had ever read from him. He wrote about his childhood, about the pressure he had felt to be perfect, to live up to expectations that felt impossible. He wrote about realizing he was gay, about the fear and shame and confusion that came with that realization, about how he had hoped that his family would accept him, would love him unconditionally, would support him no matter what. He wrote about that summer, about bringing his boyfriend home, about the look on Dad's face, the words Mom had said, the absolute rejection he had felt in that moment. He wrote about how that rejection had broken something inside him, had made him feel like he was fundamentally unlovable, fundamentally wrong, fundamentally undeserving of family or connection or belonging. He wrote about how the anger had started small, just a seed of resentment, but how it had grown over the years, fed by every holiday he spent alone, every milestone he did not share with us, every reminder that he had been cast out, that he was no longer part of the family he had been born into. He wrote about the first letter he had sent, the one to the IRS, about how he had told himself he was just doing the right thing, just reporting illegal activity, just being a good citizen. But he admitted that it had not been about civic duty. It had been about revenge, about making Dad feel the pain he had felt, about taking away something Dad valued the way Dad had taken away his sense of belonging. And once he had started, he could not stop. Each letter, each report, each act of sabotage had given him a temporary sense of satisfaction, a feeling that he was evening the score, that he was making them pay for what they had done to him. But the satisfaction never lasted, and the anger never went away, and he had found himself trapped in a cycle of revenge that consumed him, that became the defining feature of his life. He wrote about the guilt, about how it had grown over the years, about how he had watched from a distance as the consequences of his actions played out, as Dad struggled with the IRS audit, as the restaurant closed, as Mom's health declined. He wrote about wanting to stop, wanting to reach out, wanting to apologize, but being too ashamed, too afraid, too convinced that he had gone too far, that there was no coming back from what he had done. He wrote about Dad's death, about how he had not come to the funeral because he could not face us, could not pretend to grieve when he knew that he had contributed to Dad's stress, to his declining health, to his early death. He wrote about the guilt of that, about how it had nearly destroyed him, about how he had spent months in therapy trying to work through it, trying to understand why he had done what he had done, trying to figure out how to live with himself. And he wrote about Mom's death, about the confrontation with Jessica and me, about how it had been the worst and best thing that could have happened to him. Worst because it had forced him to face the full extent of what he had done, to see himself through our eyes, to understand the magnitude of the pain he had caused. Best because it had finally broken the cycle, had finally given him a reason to stop, to get real help, to start the long process of trying to become a better person. He wrote that he was in therapy now, real therapy, working through his trauma and his anger and his guilt. He wrote that he had told his partner everything, and that his partner had stayed, had supported him, had helped him see that he could change, that he could make amends, that he could build a life that was not defined by revenge and bitterness. He wrote that he was volunteering at an LGBTQ youth center, trying to help kids who were going through what he had gone through, trying to make sure that they did not make the same mistakes he had made, that they found healthier ways to process rejection and pain. He wrote that he was not asking for forgiveness, that he knew he did not deserve it, that he understood if Jessica and I never wanted to speak to him again. But he wanted us to know that he was sorry, truly sorry, and that he was trying to do better, to be better, to make something positive out of the wreckage of his life. He wrote that he hoped we were okay, that we were healing, that we were finding peace in the aftermath of Mom's death. And he wrote that if we ever changed our minds, if we ever wanted to talk, to try to rebuild some kind of relationship, he would be there, he would be ready. He would do whatever it took to earn back even a fraction of the trust he had destroyed. I read the letter 3 times, and each time I felt something different. The first time, I felt anger, felt like he was making excuses, felt like he was trying to manipulate us into feeling sorry for him. The second time, I felt sadness, felt the weight of all the pain and dysfunction and missed opportunities that had defined our family. The third time, I felt something that might have been the beginning of understanding, not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but understanding. Understanding that hurt people, that trauma begets trauma, that families are complicated and messy and sometimes irreparably broken. I showed the letter to Jessica, and we talked about it for hours, debating what it meant, whether we believed him, whether we wanted to respond. In the end, we decided not to. Not because we did not believe him, not because we did not think he was genuinely trying to change, but because we needed more time. We needed to heal, to process, to figure out who we were in the aftermath of all these revelations. We needed to build our own lives, separate from Daniel, separate from the weight of his betrayal, separate from the complicated legacy of our family. But I kept the letter. I put it in a drawer, and sometimes, when I was feeling strong enough, I would take it out and read it again, and I would think about forgiveness, about redemption, about whether people can really change, about whether some wounds can heal even when you think they cannot. Years passed. Jessica got married, had a baby, a little girl she named after Mom. I changed careers, moved to a new city, started building a life that felt more authentic, more true to who I really was. We stayed close, Jessica and I, bound together by shared history and shared trauma and shared love. We talked about Daniel sometimes, wondered how he was doing, whether he was still in therapy, whether he was still volunteering, whether he had found any kind of peace. And then, 5 years after Mom's funeral, I received another letter. This one was different, shorter, less desperate. Daniel wrote that he was getting married, that he and his partner had been together for 8 years now, that they were building a life together that felt good and healthy and real. He wrote that he understood if we did not want to come, if we did not want to be part of his life, but that he wanted us to know, wanted us to have the option, wanted us to understand that the invitation was genuine and came with no expectations or obligations. He included a photo, and I stared at it for a long time. Daniel and his partner, both of them smiling, both of them looking happy and healthy and whole. Daniel looked different than I remembered, older of course, but also softer somehow, less guarded, more at peace. And I felt something shift inside me, some small crack in the wall I had built around my heart, some tiny opening that let in a sliver of light. I called Jessica, and we talked about it, and we made a decision that surprised both of us. We decided to go. Not because we had forgiven him, not because we were ready to welcome him back into our lives with open arms, but because we were curious. Curious about who he had become, curious about whether people really could change, curious about whether there was any possibility of rebuilding something from the ruins of our family. The wedding was in Seattle, in a small garden venue, intimate and beautiful. There were maybe 50 people there, friends and colleagues and Daniel's partner's family, and Jessica and I sat in the back, feeling out of place, feeling like intruders in this life that Daniel had built without us. But when Daniel saw us, when he realized we had actually come, his face lit up with a joy so pure and genuine that it took my breath away. He did not rush over to us, did not make a scene, just caught my eye and mouthed "thank you," and I nodded, and that was enough. The ceremony was lovely, full of personal touches and heartfelt vows, and I found myself crying, not just for Daniel and his partner, but for all of us, for the family we had been and the family we might still become, for the pain we had endured and the healing that was still possible. After the ceremony, Daniel came over to us, his partner by his side, and he introduced us, and we made awkward small talk, and it was strange and uncomfortable and also somehow okay. We did not stay long. We congratulated them, we took a few photos, and then we left, driving back to our hotel in silence, both of us processing what we had just experienced. That night, over dinner, Jessica and I talked about what came next, about whether we wanted to try to rebuild a relationship with Daniel, about what that might look like, about what boundaries we would need, about what we could and could not forgive. We did not come to any grand conclusions. We did not decide to welcome him back into our lives completely, to pretend that the past had not happened, to act like everything was fine. But we decided to leave the door open, just a crack, to see what might happen, to give him a chance to prove that he had really changed, that he was really trying to be better, that he was really committed to making amends. Over the next few years, we built something new. Not the relationship we had once had, not the easy sibling bond of childhood, but something more cautious, more intentional, more honest. We exchanged emails occasionally, then phone calls, then visits. Daniel met Jessica's daughter, his niece, and I watched him hold her with such tenderness, such care, and I saw in his eyes the regret for all the years he had missed, all the moments he had thrown away in pursuit of revenge. We talked about the past sometimes, carefully, gently, with the help of a family therapist who guided us through the difficult conversations, who helped us express our pain and our anger and our grief in ways that were productive instead of destructive. Daniel never made excuses for what he had done. He owned it, apologized for it, worked to make amends in whatever small ways he could. He could not undo the damage, could not bring back Dad, could not give Mom back the years of peace she deserved. But he could show up, could be present, could try to be the brother he should have been all along. And slowly, painfully, incrementally, we began to heal. Not completely. Some wounds are too deep to ever fully close. But enough. Enough to have holidays together sometimes, to share photos and stories, to be part of each other's lives in small but meaningful ways. Enough to remember that we were family, that we shared blood and history and a complicated legacy that included both terrible pain and genuine love. I think about Mom sometimes, about what she would think of this tentative reconciliation, this careful rebuilding. I think she would be glad that we knew the truth, that we were not blindsided, that we made our choices with open eyes. But I also think she would be glad that we left the door open, that we gave Daniel a chance to change, that we did not let his betrayal define us or destroy our capacity for forgiveness and grace. Because in the end, that is what family is it not? Not perfection, not unconditional acceptance, not the absence of pain or conflict or betrayal. But the choice to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep believing that people can change, that wounds can heal, that love can survive even the deepest hurts. It is messy and complicated, and sometimes it fails spectacularly. But sometimes, if you are lucky, if you are willing to do the hard work, if you are willing to sit with the discomfort and the pain and the uncertainty, sometimes it succeeds in ways you never imagined possible. I will never forget what Daniel did to us. I will never stop wishing that he had made different choices, that he had found healthier ways to process his pain, that he had given Mom and Dad a chance to grow and change and become the parents he needed them to be. But I also cannot ignore the person he has become, the work he has done, the genuine remorse he has shown, the commitment he has made to being better. And so we move forward, Jessica and Daniel and I, carrying our scars, honoring our history, building something new from the wreckage of what was. We are not the family we once were. We will never be that family again. But we are a family nonetheless, bound together by blood and pain and the stubborn refusal to let betrayal have the final word. On the 10th anniversary of Mom's death, the three of us went back to the old house, the house we had rented out for years, the house that held so many memories, both good and bad. The tenants had moved out, and we were preparing to sell it, to finally let go of this physical reminder of our complicated past. We walked through the rooms together, remembering, grieving, laughing at old stories, crying over old wounds. We stood in Daniel's old bedroom, the room where I had found the shoebox, the room where everything had changed. It was empty now, stripped of furniture and posters and any trace of the boy who had once lived here. Just bare walls and worn carpet and dust motes floating in the afternoon sunlight. "I am sorry," Daniel said, his voice quiet but steady. "I know I have said it before, and I know it will never be enough, but I am sorry. For all of it. For the pain I caused, for the years we lost, for the person I was. I cannot change the past, but I can promise you that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your forgiveness, trying to be the brother you deserved all along." Jessica and I looked at each other, and I saw in her eyes the same complicated mix of emotions I was feeling. Anger and sadness and grief, yes, but also something else. Something that looked like acceptance, like peace, like the beginning of real forgiveness. "We know," Jessica said, reaching out to take Daniel's hand. "We know you are sorry. We know you are trying. And that matters. It does not erase what happened, but it matters." I took Daniel's other hand, and the three of us stood there in that empty room, connected by touch and blood and shared history, and I felt something release inside me, some burden I had been carrying for 10 years finally lifting. I was not sure if it was forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever completely. But it was something. It was a choice to move forward, to let go of the anger that had been poisoning me, to believe that people could change, that families could heal, that love could survive even the deepest betrayals. We left the house together that day, locking the door behind us for the last time, and as we walked to our cars, I looked back at the building that had held so much of our history, so much of our pain, so much of our love. And I thought about Mom, about how she had carried the secret of Daniel's betrayal for so long, about how she had protected us and hurt us in equal measure by keeping the truth from us. I thought about Dad, about how he had died with guilt and regret, never knowing that his son had orchestrated so much of his suffering. I thought about all the ways families hurt each other, intentionally and unintentionally, and all the ways they heal, slowly and imperfectly and with tremendous effort. And I thought about the future, about the family we were building now, the one that included Daniel but was not defined by his betrayal, the one that acknowledged the past but was not imprisoned by it. It was not the family I had imagined when I was young, when I thought family meant unconditional love and unwavering support and the absence of real conflict. But it was real, and it was ours, and it was enough. As I drove away from that house, Jessica in the car beside me and Daniel following behind in his own car, I felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. Hope that we could continue to heal, that we could continue to grow, that we could build something beautiful from the broken pieces of our past. Hope that the story of our family was not over, that there were still chapters to be written, still moments of joy and connection and love to be experienced. Nobody imagines what happened when they look at us now, when they see the three of us together at holidays or family gatherings. They see siblings who are close, who care about each other, who have built a relationship that seems easy and natural. They do not see the years of betrayal, the systematic destruction, the deep wounds that still ache sometimes when the weather changes or when a memory surfaces unexpectedly. They do not see the work we have done, the therapy sessions, the difficult conversations, the tears and anger and slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. And maybe that is okay. Maybe some stories are meant to be private, meant to be held close by the people who lived them. Maybe the world does not need to know every detail of our pain, every moment of our struggle. Maybe it is enough that we know, that we carry it with us, that we use it to inform how we love each other, how we show up for each other, how we choose to be family despite everything that tried to tear us apart. I think about that morning when I found the shoebox, when I opened it and discovered the truth about my brother, and I remember the feeling of the world falling apart, of everything I thought I knew crumbling into dust. And I think about how far we have come since then, how much we have grown, how much we have learned about forgiveness and grace and the complicated nature of love. Daniel will never be the brother he was before, the golden child with the easy smile and the bright future. That person never really existed, was always a fiction we created to make sense of someone we did not really understand. But he is the brother he is now, flawed and broken and trying, and that is real, and that is something we can work with, something we can build on. Jessica's daughter is 5 now, and she adores her Uncle Daniel, has no idea about the complicated history that preceded her existence. She just knows that he sends her books and calls her on her birthday and makes her laugh with silly voices and magic tricks. And watching them together, watching Daniel be present and loving and genuinely invested in her life, I see the person he could have been all along if things had been different, if he had been accepted, if he had found healthier ways to process his pain. And I wonder sometimes what would have happened if Mom and Dad had reacted differently that summer, if they had welcomed Daniel's boyfriend, if they had told him they loved him no matter what, if they had given him the acceptance he so desperately needed. Would he have stayed? Would we have been a different family, a healthier family, a family without all this pain and betrayal and loss? But I cannot change the past any more than Daniel can. I cannot go back and make Mom and Dad more accepting, more understanding, more willing to love unconditionally. I cannot undo the hurt that was inflicted, the words that were said, the rejection that set everything else in motion. All I can do is learn from it, use it to inform how I love the people in my life, how I show up for them, how I create space for them to be who they really are. I came out as bisexual 2 years ago, and I was terrified, even though I knew intellectually that Jessica would be supportive, that Daniel would understand better than anyone. But the fear was there, the fear of rejection, the fear of being seen as different, as wrong, as unacceptable. And when I told them, when I finally found the courage to say the words out loud, they both hugged me and told me they loved me and that nothing would ever change that. And Daniel cried, and he told me he was sorry that I had been afraid, sorry that our family history had made me doubt their love, sorry that he had not been there to show me that it was okay to be yourself, that you could survive rejection and come out the other side. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental about forgiveness, about healing, about the way pain can be transformed into something meaningful. Daniel's betrayal had nearly destroyed our family, but it had also taught us something valuable about the cost of rejection, about the importance of acceptance, about the need to love people for who they are rather than who we want them to be. And that lesson, painful as it was to learn, had made us better people, had made us more compassionate, had made us more willing to do the hard work of really seeing each other, really accepting each other, really loving each other despite our flaws and failures. Last month, Daniel and his husband adopted a baby, a little boy they named Robert, after Dad. When Daniel told us, when he sent us the photo of them holding this tiny, perfect human, I cried for an hour straight. I cried for the grandfather this baby would never meet, for the years of relationship that had been lost, for the pain that had defined so much of our family's story. But I also cried with joy, with hope, with the knowledge that this baby would grow up in a family that had learned from its mistakes, that had done the hard work of healing, that was committed to breaking the cycles of pain and rejection that had plagued previous generations. Jessica and I flew to Seattle to meet baby Robert, and we spent a weekend with Daniel and his husband, helping with feedings and diaper changes and just marveling at this new life, this new beginning. And as I held my nephew, as I looked into his tiny face and thought about all the possibilities ahead of him, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt grateful. Grateful for the journey we had been on, painful as it was. Grateful for the lessons we had learned, hard as they were. Grateful for the family we had become, imperfect as it was. Because we were not the family we started as, and we were not the family we thought we would be, but we were a family nonetheless. We were people who had hurt each other deeply and had chosen to heal. We were people who had betrayed and been betrayed and had found a way to move forward. We were people who had learned that love is not the absence of pain but the choice to stay, to work, to believe in the possibility of redemption even when it seems impossible. On the last night of our visit, after the baby was asleep and we were sitting in Daniel's living room drinking tea and talking about nothing in particular, Daniel looked at me and Jessica and said, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for believing that I could change, that I could be better, that I could be worthy of being part of this family again. I know I do not deserve it, but I am grateful for it every single day." And Jessica, who had been the most hurt by Daniel's betrayal, who had struggled the most with forgiveness, who had needed the most time to heal, reached over and took his hand. "You are our brother," she said simply. And family does not give up on family. It takes work, and it takes time, and it takes a willingness to sit with discomfort and pain and uncertainty. But we do it because we love you, because we believe in you, because we want you in our lives. Not the person you were, but the person you are becoming. And I added, we are all becoming. We are all works in progress. We have all made mistakes, all hurt people we love, all fallen short of who we want to be. The difference is whether we learn from it, whether we grow from it, whether we use our pain to become more compassionate, more understanding, more willing to extend grace to others and to ourselves. Daniel nodded, tears streaming down his face, and the three of us sat there in comfortable silence, connected by something deeper than blood, deeper than shared history, deeper than the pain we had endured. We were connected by choice, by the decision to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep believing in the possibility of healing and redemption and love. I think about Mom often, especially in moments like these. I think about the burden she carried, the secret she kept, the decision she made to tell us the truth before she died. And I understand now why she did it. She did not tell us to hurt us, or to turn us against Daniel, or to poison our memories of him. She told us because she knew that real relationships, real family, real love, cannot be built on lies and secrets and willful ignorance. She told us because she wanted us to have the choice, to make our own decisions with open eyes, to build something real and honest and true. And we have. It has taken years, and it has been painful, and there are still moments when the old wounds ache, when I remember what Daniel did and feel the anger rising up again. But those moments are fewer now, farther between, less consuming. They are part of our story, but they are not the whole story. They are the darkness that makes the light more precious, the pain that makes the healing more meaningful, the betrayal that makes the forgiveness more profound. Nobody imagines what happened when they look at us. They see a family that is close, that cares about each other, that shows up for each other. And that is true. But it is not the whole truth. The whole truth is messier, more complicated, more painful. The whole truth includes betrayal and revenge and years of systematic destruction. The whole truth includes rejection and hurt and wounds that will never fully heal. But the whole truth also includes redemption and forgiveness and the stubborn refusal to let pain have the final word. The whole truth is that we are a family that was broken and chose to heal. We are people who hurt each other and chose to forgive. We are siblings who were torn apart and chose to come back together. And that choice, that daily decision to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep believing in each other, that is what makes us family. Not the blood we share, not the history we have, but the choice we make, again and again, to love each other despite everything, to be there for each other no matter what, to build something beautiful from the broken pieces of our past. And so we move forward, carrying our scars, honoring our history, building our future. We celebrate holidays together now, all of us, Daniel and his husband and their son, Jessica and her husband and their daughter, and me with whoever I am dating at the time or sometimes alone. We take photos and make memories and create new traditions that honor the past while not being imprisoned by it. We talk about mom and dad, remembering the good and acknowledging the bad, teaching the next generation about where they came from and what it took to get here. And sometimes, when I am holding baby Robert or playing with Jessica's daughter, I think about the family they will grow up in, the family we are creating for them. It will not be perfect. No family is. There will be conflicts and misunderstandings and moments of pain. But it will be honest. It will be real. It will be a family that knows how to apologize, how to forgive, how to do the hard work of staying connected even when it would be easier to walk away. And I think that is the greatest gift we can give them, the greatest legacy we can leave. Not a fairy tale of perfect love and unwavering support, but a real story of real people who made real mistakes and found real ways to heal. A story that says you can survive betrayal, you can overcome pain, you can build something beautiful even from the most broken foundations. A story that says family is not about being perfect, but about being present, about showing up, about choosing love even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Last week, on what would have been Mom's 70th birthday, the three of us went to her grave. We brought flowers, her favorite roses, and we stood there in the quiet cemetery, the autumn leaves falling around us, and we told her about our lives, about the family we had become, about the healing we had found. And I felt her presence there, felt her approval, felt her love surrounding us like a warm embrace. "We did it, Mom," I whispered, my hand on the cool marble of her headstone. We found our way back to each other. It was not easy, and it was not quick, and it will never be perfect. But we did it. We are a family again. A different family, a more honest family, a family that knows the cost of love and chooses to pay it anyway. And as we walked away from that grave, the three of us together, I felt something settle inside me, some final piece clicking into place. The story of our family was not over. It would never be over, not as long as we were alive, not as long as we kept choosing each other, kept showing up for each other, kept believing in the possibility of love and healing and redemption. But this chapter, the chapter that began with a shoebox full of letters and a dying mother's confession, this chapter was finally coming to a close. We had faced the truth. We had sat with the pain. We had done the hard work of forgiveness and healing. And we had emerged on the other side, not unscathed, but stronger, more compassionate, more committed to being the family we wanted to be rather than the family we had been. Nobody imagines what happened. Nobody knows the full story. And that is okay. Because the story is ours, and we get to decide what it means, how it shapes us, where it leads us. We get to decide whether the betrayal defines us or whether the healing does. We get to decide whether we are victims of our past or architects of our future. And we have decided. We have chosen healing over bitterness, forgiveness over revenge, love over hate. And that choice, that daily, moment-by-moment choice to be better, to do better, to love better, that is what makes us family. That is what makes us human. That is what gives our story meaning and purpose and hope. The sun is setting now as I write this, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, the same colors it was painted on the day we confronted Daniel, on the day Mom died, on the day we stood in that empty house and chose to move forward together. And I think about how much has changed since then, how much we have grown, how much we have learned. And I think about how much is still ahead of us, how many more chapters there are to write, how many more moments of joy and pain and connection and love we will experience together. And I am grateful. Grateful for the journey, painful as it has been. Grateful for the lessons, hard as they were. Grateful for the family I have, imperfect as it is. Grateful for the choice to love, to forgive, to heal, to believe in the possibility of redemption even when it seems impossible. Because in the end, that is what family is. Not perfection, but presence. Not the absence of pain, but the willingness to sit with it, to work through it, to come out the other side together. Not unconditional acceptance, but the choice to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep believing that love is stronger than hate, that healing is possible, that people can change. Nobody imagines what happened. But we know. We carry it with us, this knowledge, this history, this complicated legacy of pain and healing. We carry it not as a burden, but as a reminder. A reminder of where we have been, what we have survived, what we have overcome. A reminder that families are complicated, that love is messy, that healing is possible even when it seems impossible. A reminder that we are stronger than we think, more resilient than we know, more capable of forgiveness and grace than we ever imagined. And as I close this chapter of our story, as I look toward the future with hope and gratitude and a deep, abiding love for the family we have become, I think about the words I would say to anyone who is struggling with their own family pain, their own betrayals, their own complicated relationships. I would say this: healing is possible, but it is not easy. Forgiveness is a choice, but it is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice, a moment-by-moment commitment to choosing love over hate, grace over judgment, hope over despair. I would say that you do not have to forgive immediately, that you do not have to rush the process, that you are allowed to feel your anger and your pain and your grief for as long as you need to. But I would also say that holding on to that anger, letting it consume you, letting it define you, that will only hurt you in the end. That the person who benefits most from forgiveness is not the person who hurt you, but you yourself, because forgiveness is what sets you free, what allows you to move forward, what gives you back your power and your peace. I would say that family is complicated, that blood does not automatically make people worthy of your love and trust, that you are allowed to set boundaries, to protect yourself, to walk away if that is what you need to do. But I would also say that if there is any possibility of healing, any chance of redemption, any hope of rebuilding, it is worth exploring, worth trying, worth the risk of being hurt again. Because the alternative, a life lived in isolation and bitterness and unresolved pain, that is no life at all. And I would say that you are not alone. That every family has its secrets, its betrayals, its complicated dynamics. That the perfect families you see on social media, the ones that seem to have it all together, they are struggling too, they are hurting too. They are doing their best to navigate the messy reality of human relationships just like you are. And that there is no shame in that struggle, no weakness in that pain, no failure in that imperfection. There is only the human experience, and all its complicated, beautiful, heartbreaking glory. So we move forward, Jessica and Daniel and I, carrying our scars, honoring our history, building our future. We are not the family we were, and we are not the family we thought we would be, but we are a family nonetheless. We are people who have been broken and have chosen to heal. We are siblings who have hurt each other and have chosen to forgive. We are human beings doing our best to love each other despite our flaws and failures and the complicated legacy we inherited. And that is enough. It has to be enough. Because perfection is not possible, and waiting for it will only leave you alone and bitter and full of regret. But showing up, trying, choosing love even when it is hard, that is possible. That is within our reach. That is the choice we make every day, every moment, every time we pick up the phone or send a text or show up at a family gathering even when we would rather stay home. That is the choice that makes us family. That is the choice that gives our story meaning. That is the choice that transforms pain into purpose, betrayal into wisdom, brokenness into beauty. Nobody imagines what happened when they look at us. They see a family that is close, that cares about each other, that has weathered storms and come out stronger. And that is true. But it is not the whole truth. The whole truth is messier, more complicated, more painful. The whole truth includes years of betrayal and systematic destruction and wounds that will never fully heal. But the whole truth also includes redemption and forgiveness and the stubborn, beautiful, impossible choice to love each other anyway. And that, in the end, is the story I want to tell. Not a story of perfect love or easy forgiveness or pain-free relationships. But a story of real people making real choices in the face of real pain. A story of a family that was broken and chose to heal. A story of siblings who were torn apart and chose to come back together. A story of love that survived betrayal, of hope that survived despair, of light that survived darkness. A story that says healing is possible. Forgiveness is possible. Redemption is possible. Family is possible, even when it seems impossible, even when every rational part of you says to walk away, even when the pain is so deep you think you will never recover. It is possible because we are human, and humans are capable of extraordinary things when we choose love over hate, grace over judgment, hope over despair. This is our story. This is what happened. This is what nobody imagines when they look at us, when they see us together, when they assume that family is simple and love is easy and forgiveness is automatic. But now you know. Now you understand. Now you have seen behind the curtain, into the messy reality of what it takes to build a family from broken pieces, to create love from the ashes of betrayal, to choose healing when revenge would be so much easier. And maybe, if you are struggling with your own family pain, your own betrayals, your own complicated relationships, maybe this story will give you hope. Maybe it will show you that you are not alone, that healing is possible, that the choice to love is always available to you, no matter how deep the wounds, no matter how long the estrangement, no matter how impossible reconciliation seems. Or maybe it will show you that walking away is okay too, that some relationships cannot be salvaged, that protecting yourself is not selfish, that you are allowed to choose your own peace over someone else's redemption. Because every situation is different, every family is unique, every person has to make their own choices about what they can forgive, what they can tolerate, what they need to heal. There is no one right answer. There is no perfect solution. There is only the choice you make, the path you take, the life you build from the circumstances you have been given. And whatever choice you make, whatever path you take, I hope you do it with intention, with honesty, with a commitment to your own healing and growth and peace. Because that is what matters in the end. Not whether you forgive or do not forgive, not whether you reconcile or walk away, but whether you are living authentically, honestly, in alignment with your values and your needs and your truth. Whether you are choosing love or choosing boundaries, choosing grace or choosing self-protection, as long as you are choosing consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of what you are doing and why, then you are doing it right. This is what I have learned from our journey, from the years of pain and healing and growth. That there is no one right way to be a family. That love is complicated and messy and sometimes it fails. That forgiveness is possible but not required. That healing takes time and work and a willingness to sit with discomfort and uncertainty. That people can change, but only if they want to, only if they are willing to do the hard work, only if they are committed to being better. And that family, real family, is not about perfection or the absence of conflict or unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. It is about showing up, about trying, about choosing each other again and again even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. It is about honesty and vulnerability and the willingness to do the work of staying connected even when disconnection would be easier. It is about grace and forgiveness and second chances, but also about boundaries and self-protection and knowing when to walk away. It is about holding space for pain and anger and grief, but also for joy and love and hope. It is about being fully human in all our complicated, contradictory, beautiful messiness. This is our story. This is what nobody imagines. This is the truth behind the smiling family photos, behind the holiday gatherings, behind the casual mentions of my brother and his family. This is the work we have done, the pain we have endured, the healing we have found. This is the choice we make every day, to be family despite everything, to love each other through the pain, to believe in the possibility of redemption and grace and second chances. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. The sun has set now, and the stars are coming out, tiny points of light in the vast darkness of the sky. And I think about how appropriate that is, how the darkness makes the light more precious, how the pain makes the healing more meaningful, how the betrayal makes the forgiveness more profound. I think about how we are all just tiny points of light in the vast darkness, doing our best to shine, to connect, to create something beautiful from the raw materials of our lives. And I think about my family, about Jessica and Daniel and the next generation we are raising together, and I feel a deep sense of peace, of gratitude, of hope for the future. We have been through so much, survived so much, overcome so much. And we are still here, still together, still choosing each other, still believing in the possibility of love and healing and redemption. Nobody imagines what happened. But we know. And that knowledge, that shared history, that complicated legacy, it binds us together in ways that easy love never could. It makes us stronger, more compassionate, more committed to being the family we want to be rather than the family we were. It gives our story depth and meaning and purpose. And as I sit here, reflecting on everything we have been through, everything we have learned, everything we have become, I am filled with a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that taught us compassion. Gratitude for the betrayal that taught us the value of trust. Gratitude for the brokenness that taught us how to heal. Gratitude for the darkness that taught us to appreciate the light. I am grateful for Mom, for the burden she carried, for the truth she shared, for the love she showed us even in her final days. I am grateful for Dad, for the lessons he taught us, for the mistakes he made that showed us how to do better, for the love he gave us even when he did not know how to show it. I am grateful for Jessica, for her strength and her grace and her willingness to do the hard work of healing alongside me. And I am grateful for Daniel, for his honesty and his remorse and his commitment to being better, for showing us that people can change, that redemption is possible, that love can survive even the deepest betrayals. I am grateful for the journey, painful as it has been. I am grateful for the family we have become, imperfect as it is. I am grateful for the choice to love, to forgive, to heal, to believe in the possibility of something better. And I am grateful for this moment, right now, sitting here in the quiet of the evening, reflecting on our story, feeling the weight of everything we have been through and the lightness of everything we have overcome. I am grateful to be alive, to be part of this messy, complicated, beautiful thing called family, to have the opportunity to love and be loved, to hurt and be hurt, to forgive and be forgiven. This is what nobody imagines. This is the truth behind the facade. This is the real story of my family, of my brother who was secretly the family's informant, of the betrayal that nearly destroyed us and the healing that saved us. This is the story of how we survived, how we grew, how we became the family we are today. And it is a story worth telling, worth sharing, worth remembering. Not because it is unique, but because it is universal. Not because we did everything right, but because we did our best with what we had. Not because we are special, but because we are human, and this is what humans do. We hurt each other. We betray each other. We fail each other. But we also forgive each other. We heal each other. We love each other. And that love, that stubborn, impossible, beautiful love, that is what makes us family. That is what makes us human. That is what gives our lives meaning and purpose and hope. So this is where our story stands today. Not at an ending, because stories like ours do not really end as long as we are alive, as long as we are still choosing each other, still showing up for each other, still doing the work of being family. But at a resting place, a moment of peace, a chance to look back at how far we have come and look forward to where we are going. We are not the family we were. We will never be that family again. But we are a family nonetheless, bound together by blood and pain and the choice to love each other anyway. We are people who have been broken and have chosen to heal. We are siblings who have hurt each other and have chosen to forgive. We are human beings doing our best to navigate the complicated terrain of family, of love, of forgiveness, of grace. And that is enough. It has to be enough. Because perfection is not possible, and waiting for it will only leave you alone and bitter and full of regret. But this messy, complicated, imperfect love, this is possible. This is real. This is what we have built from the ruins of what was. And it is beautiful, in its own way. Beautiful because it is hard-won. Beautiful because it is honest. Beautiful because it is a choice we make every day, a commitment we renew every moment, a love we practice even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult. Nobody imagines what happened. Nobody knows the full story. And maybe that is how it should be. Maybe some stories are meant to be private, meant to be held close by the people who lived them. Maybe the world does not need to know every detail of our pain, every moment of our struggle, every step of our journey. Maybe it is enough that we know, that we carry it with us, that we use it to inform how we love each other, how we show up for each other, how we choose to be family. But I have told you now. I have shared our story, our truth, our journey from betrayal to healing, from brokenness to wholeness, from despair to hope. I have told you because I believe that stories have power, that sharing our pain can help others feel less alone, that being honest about our struggles can give others permission to be honest about theirs. I have told you because I believe that healing is possible, that forgiveness is possible, that love is possible even in the face of the deepest betrayals and the most profound pain. And I have told you because this is our truth, and truth matters. Truth is what sets us free, what allows us to heal, what gives us the foundation to build something real and lasting and meaningful. Truth is what Mom gave us when she told us about Daniel, what Daniel gave us when he admitted what he had done, what we give each other every time we choose honesty over pretense, vulnerability over protection, authenticity over performance. So this is our story. This is what happened. This is what nobody imagines when they look at us, when they see us together, when they assume that family is simple and love is easy and forgiveness is automatic. But now you know. Now you understand. Now you have seen the truth behind the facade, the work behind the healing, the choice behind the love. And maybe, just maybe, our story will inspire you to tell yours. To be honest about your pain, your struggles, your complicated relationships. To stop pretending that everything is fine when it is not, that your family is perfect when it is not, that love is easy when it is not. To give yourself permission to be human, to be flawed, to be struggling, to be doing your best even when your best feels inadequate. Because we are all struggling. We are all doing our best. We are all navigating the complicated terrain of human relationships with imperfect maps and limited resources and wounds that have not fully healed. And the more we can be honest about that, the more we can share our stories and our struggles and our hard-won wisdom, the less alone we will all feel, the more supported we will all be, the more hope we will all have that healing is possible, that love is possible, that family is possible even when it seems impossible. This is what I have learned. This is what I want to share. This is the gift that has come from our pain, the wisdom that has emerged from our struggle, the hope that has survived our darkest moments. That healing is possible. That forgiveness is possible. That love is possible. That family is possible. Not easy, not simple, not pain-free, but possible. Always possible. As long as we are willing to do the work, to make the choice, to show up again and again even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. So we move forward, Jessica and Daniel and I, carrying our scars, honoring our history, building our future. We are not perfect. We are not healed completely. We are not without pain or struggle or moments of doubt. But we are here. We are together. We are family. And that is everything.